So the first paper presenter is Dr. N Lakshmi ma'am. Lakshmi ma'am of Government Degree College Ramachandrapuram. Ma'am, are you there? Okay, then we'll go on to the next presenter, Dr. Shamla ma'am. Shamla ma'am, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready.
Okay, ma'am, you can present.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good morning, all. I'm Dr. Shamla, Department of Philosophy, Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Payyanur Regional Center. At the very outset, I thank all the organizers of the seminar for giving me an opportunity to present my paper here. And my paper's title is Importance of Education in an Inclusive Democracy, with special reference to the views of Swami Vivekananda and Mahatma Gandhi. So, as you all know, education is really very important, and it has to be uh, discussed these days because we are going very much down in our status with regard to higher education schemes, at least in Kerala. I don't know how many of you are aware of things going on here. Anyway, so I thought it would be very much better if I take a topic like this. And coming to democracy, it's really very much important in a democracy. And the ultimate objective of democracy is not only a successful government, but it's an establishment of an ideal state in which there is maximum scope for the development of the individuals. As it was suggested or opined by Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, democracy is not merely a political system, but it's a way of life. It's a way of life which affords equality to everyone, irrespective of all differences in caste, creed, religion, sex, status, etc., etc., etc. Here, equality implies equal rights as well as equal freedom. So, this is what actually meant in a democracy. And if this democracy has to be successful, uh, in what way I have given before, this democracy be successful, each and every individual should be socially, politically, and economically equal. This is what, how to get this, or how we can be successful in a democracy by including all the people who are living outside the sketch are is the concern of inclusive democracy. And it's somewhat recently coined term like that in 1997. Actually, it was given in a book by Takis Fotopoulos, a Greek political thinker, and he coined this term inclusive democracy in his book Towards an Inclusive Democracy, which was published in 1997. And it says that in that book, he says that every society has its share of some vulnerable groups or oppressed classes who is open to attack and deny of equal rights and justice. And this, when there is a larger section like this, democracy will be only in a name. That is what I am going to. So, we cannot have democracy in the actual sense of the term. When this large section of people of the society suffer from discrimination, as you all know, we are now having the representative form of democracy, and this representative form of democracy is criticized for having the form of democracy only because it is more representative and not participatory. It has failed actually in what can I say, in reducing the layers of mediation between the people and the state. So I think only an inclusive democracy can work as a bridge between this representative democracy as well as participatory democracy. And we know that democracy is inconceivable without education, because education alone can generate and instill qualities which are required, very much required for a democracy. And coming to this inclusive democracy, this become here again a more must. And in this paper of mine, I would like to highlight the ideals of this great thinkers of Swami Vivekananda and Mahatma Gandhi, and their educational ideals, and how this will prove to be an important in an inclusive democracy. As you all know, coming to this session of Swami Vivekananda's education ideal, we know that Swami Vivekananda was an effective exponent of Vedanta tradition in the modern times, and he developed it to a very strong and inspiring philosophy, which impressed not only the elite group but also the general masses. And he wanted, and his aim through this was to, what can I say, to retrieve the Indian society from apathy and inaction into which it had sunk during that time, and to infuse what is hope and vigor to all sections of the society. And his economic and educational philosophy was also based on his general philosophy of Vedanta, and his educational philosophy can be considered as Vedantist, or he can be considered as a Vedantist educationist. And because he had profound faith in Advaita Vedanta or non-dualism. And it was based on the principle of universal brotherhood. Here lies the importance of inclusive democracy, because he was giving more importance to universal brotherhood. And he held that each soul is potentially divine, which means that divinity is hidden in every living creature, and every living being is a part of the divine and eternal soul, that is the Brahman. And he held that education is a manifestation. This is a famous quotation of Swami Vivekananda, and he says that with regard to education, education is a manifestation of the perfection already in man. We all are perfect in one sense, but it's hidden somewhere. It's inherent in us, and this perfection is already inherent in man, and education is a manifestation. We should try, through education, we should try to bring it out, that perfection. And so he said that this character is a solid foundation of self-development. We have to, what we wanted, he wanted through education was self-development, and this character was a solid foundation of self-development. And so the main aim of his educational idea was character building, and the means of character building, the means to character building, according to Swami Vivekananda, was love. And he held that it should be based on love, and love for all fellow beings. And that is why Vivekananda's philosophy of education is known as education of man making. Here he was giving importance to man making, because he was trying to create self-confidence and self-realization in each and every person through his education. And education must make man conscious of his hidden powers. Man must be, man is a treasure house of so many potentialities, and that potentialities has to be, what can I say, it should be discovered from within himself, and this is possible only through education. And through this education he will become fully confident on himself, and that is how he will lead to this self-confidence will lead to self-realization. And the aim of this man-making education, Swami Vivekananda developed a curriculum which was really suited to those aims and all-round development of the educate. This trend, in order to have this type of education, he had designed a curriculum which was in which he tried to synthesize science as well as Vedanta. Science as well as Vedanta, that is modern and ancient knowledge together, so that that kind of education may involve whatever is best in man, whatever is best in man, and develop each and every aspect of the child's personality. He held that emphasis upon scientific education as on one side and Vedanta on the other side will be very much helpful for a person's education, because man is essentially a psycho-physical in nature. So he held that importance of not only of the spiritual side or the mental side, he also gave importance to physical education of young women, men and women, because a sound mind is very much necessary to develop a sound body. So he stressed on physical education. One another thing, what was importance of Swami Vivekananda's education scheme was his concept of religious or moral education. This was necessary because the effect, in order to avoid the evil effects, all kind of evil effects of modern civilization, he included this also in his curriculum. And this religion is not any particular what we consider now as a religion, but this religion is not a particular dogma or a sectarian philosophy, but it's a religion of man. This is the religion of man. Sorry. Can I continue, ma'am? Any problem? So, India, according to him, Swamiji, needs a religion which should be harmonious with science, as well as that will teach patriotism, service, sacrifice, etc., etc., etc. And so he pleaded for this kind of moral and religious education in his education scheme. And what I wanted to stress more than all these things was Vivekananda's educational philosophy he stood for universal mass education. And he held that without this mass education, our country's changes in our country is not possible. And according to Swamiji, education is the birthright. Education is the birthright. So he was deeply moved by because he was deeply moved by the poverty of the masses, and he thought that this poverty can be removed only through education. And so education must reach every home. And he was an ardent lover of the masses, and so he described that he decided to improve their condition only through education. And he observes that the education which does not help the common masses of the people to equip themselves for life, which does not bring out the strength of character, is not worth the name. Real education is that which enables one to stand on his legs. And it was due to his devotion for this backward classes that Swami Vivekananda wanted to make education universal one, and this so that these backward classes people may fall in line with others. He was also extremely sorry for the poor condition of women in India during that time, and he believed that the nation could not rise properly or without paying due attention to the status of women. So he championed the cause of women education also, because it was really necessary for the regeneration of India during that time. So we can say that Vivekananda was a great educationist, and he revolutionized almost entire field of education, and his educational views were immensely influenced by the eternal truth of Vedanta, where it says that non-dualism, there is no difference between one and other. And he inspired a new spirit in the blood of Indian youth through his revolutionary ideas of education. Coming to Gandhi, he doesn't need a introduction, because all of us are very familiar with him as the father of our nation, and with his message of love and tolerance and what can I say, service to mankind. Mahatma Gandhi has successfully infused a new hope in man, and he is second to none another in what the contribution, his contribution for the building up of social and political regeneration of India. And as we all know, Sarvodaya, his concept of Sarvodaya, is the apex of a social philosophy, and this was the foundation of his education philosophy as well. And the Sarvodaya, we know Sarvodaya as a term came from two important Sarva and Udaya, which means upliftment of all. And he feels that for the rejuvenation of the society, education as a science of individual development should march alongside social progress. And he also says that according the harmonious development of human personality, and defines by education, I mean all round, drawing out of the best in child and man, body, mind, and spirit. He was giving importance both to body as well as mind. And for this basic education scheme was called as basic education, he coined a new term, Nai Talim, which means a new life, or which is based on craft and industries for, what can I say, imparting the education. Here, education is imparted through craft education. And the function of Nai Talim was not only to teach craft or occupation, but through that, it would be lead to an overall development of man. And he developed the scheme which was well suited to the rural areas of India. And this basic education consisted of different stages. And the first stage is pre-basic pre-basic education, and this was meant for children from 2.5 years to 7 years. And here, education is concentrating on health and hygiene, games, a little bit of arithmetic, language, etc., etc., etc. The next stage of basic education is the basic level,
Ma'am,
which
can we? Hello? Excuse me,
is
ma'am.
time of.
Ma'am, I think, ma'am, we you should conclude now because time is there are
Okay,
time
okay, sir.
constraints, and then you have
So,
already taken nearly
okay.
13 to 14 minutes.
Okay, so this four stages include pre-basic, basic, post-basic, and higher education. And this Gandhi's aim was included self-realization, and as it was based on Sarvodaya, as I told you earlier, he wanted the upliftment of the backward classes altogether. And this came of his scheme of basic education firmly was based on free and compulsory education. So this basic scheme of Gandhian education was actually gave us the directions in which the education scheme of our country should move. And when we go through this Gandhi's and Vivekananda's education ideas, we understand that the the aims, methods, and curriculums which they designed through their educational philosophy, and that's the core of my paper, was meant for all sections of society, including the oppressed classes, and they didn't keep anyone. They didn't. Sorry. uh, this can be clearly seen in their educational philosophies, and both of them visualized an integral development of society because they were aiming at including democracy, though the term was not coined that time. We can see the dimensions of inclusive democracy in their what can I say, in their educational philosophy throughout, because it was meant for all the sections of society, including men, women, and all caste, all people, all religion, etc., etc., etc. And so I conclude that uh, this an inclusive society cannot be created by constitutional amendments alone. Representation at different political levels, equal rights, and to all groups of citizens, and redistributive justice are the main ingredients of this inclusive democracy. And awareness of this can be made only through education. And I think that this educational philosophy of these great thinkers will help us a lot to understand, I mean, will be a great help to us for education. And this message of their philosophy will continue to inspire
Thank you, ma'am.
and
Thank you, ma'am.
enlighten
Ma'am,
the
thank you so much.
generation also. Thank you.
We have gotten the crux of your paper, and then thank you so much for presenting such a wonderful paper before us. So we had with us Dr. Shyamla K. assistant professor at this particular institute called Department of Philosophy, SS University of Sanskrit, that is Kannur. Now, well, ma'am, you spoke really well on education, and then what the ideas of Vivekananda and then Gandhiji were on education. Vivekananda and Gandhi, they both stressed more on value education or character making uh, education, sort of education. Because if I look at it, so both of them, they believed that the ultimate aim of education is character development, which is obviously a sure stepping stone to nation building. And he thought actually that it is a pity that the existing system of education as such, right, it did not enable a person to stand on his feet, nor did it teach him self-confidence and self-respect. That is why if you look at these early reformers in Indian society, they did try to inculcate in the youth those very values. Right now, if you look at Gandhi and that is Vivekananda, both can be referred to as the critical traditionalists. Right, because when you are talking about all-inclusive education, we simultaneously think about what that. Well, are you looking at a tradition from that romantic side, right, or from that high ultra nationalistic side? No, that is not what they look at it. They actually try to look at how inclusivity can be made a part of education. That is why they actually resorted to uplift those very sections of the society who actually did not have that access to education at that time, right? Be it women or be it actually other people coming from other castes, right? So that is why if I look at it, I actually look at them as critical traditionalists, because see, there were many shortcomings, many evils in our society, and then they both tried to bring about an amelioration in the existing situations at those times. Now, one was actually a political monk, that is Gandhiji, and another one was a spiritual monk, right? So they did try to speak against, actually, I would say, the colonial system of education or colonial discourse of education, right? In which actually, mostly had materialistic basis, right? So they both tried to do, whatever was possible in their respective ways. Now, you're from Kerala, which is actually the tops in the literacy rate in the country, and I'm speaking from Himachal, which stand actually at the second position in education. So, well, I do not have any question as such, but just simply, if I would ask you as to how do you look at this education system in Kerala particularly, especially when you are from the department of that is philosophy.
Sorry, sir, can you make it more
When,
clear? With regard to
yeah,
Kerala education, you are asking?
yeah, I'm asking that, see, Kerala tops, that is the literacy rate in entire country, right? So it is like that in Himachal too. We also have we figure actually at the second number. So how do you look at the education system of Kerala? Are you happy with that, or do you still find that, well, there are some problems which can be looked upon?
Certainly, sir, there are lots of problems with regard to education system in Kerala, throughout India, I feel, and especially in
And
Kerala, and I think, and because
any one thing that you would like to tell the audience here before we quickly proceed to the second speaker?
yes, there are certain problems with regard to this because of the rough politics going on here. This everything is politicized here. That's the biggest problem with regard to education, especially with the higher education. When the top post, including VC, are related to this politics, and it is given to the positions are given to those who are related to the ruling class. That's the biggest problem. They are not least
Actually,
concerned about the qualifications.
actually, it is
And
happening everywhere, ma'am. Everywhere.
that's why I
Throughout
told
India.
everywhere.
Uh,
That's what I told, especially in Kerala. I think since I am very much aware of the situations here in the university, especially, we are having that problem.
We are having the same problems in universities in, I mean, where we are serving. Anyway, thank you so much, ma'am. Your paper was
Thank
wonderful. I hope the audience really released your thoughts. Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Now let us come to the, do we have the first speaker now? The first speaker,
Yes,
the
sir.
first speaker,
Good morning,
Dr.
sir.
N
This is
Lakshmi.
Dr. Lakshmi. Yes, sir. This is Dr. Lakshmi speaking, sir.
Okay, Lakshmi
I'm
ji.
there, sir. I'm the
Well,
first speaker.
yes, we know you are the first speaker, but since you were not there, so we thought of moving to the second speaker. Now,
Sir, it's okay,
Dr.
sir.
N
It's
Lakshmi,
okay, sir.
yeah,
I
Dr.
may
N
be
Lakshmi is,
excused, sir. Kindly excused.
you have been excused, ma'am, no problem. Dr. N Lakshmi is serving as Assistant Professor of English and HOD, Department of English, Government Degree College, Ramachandrapuram, EG district. It does not figure there. So, ma'am, you are speaking on Foreseeing Anthropocene Havoc, a study of William Wordsworth's poems. So, I request you to conclude your presentation in 10 minutes so that we could have some at least 2 to 3 minutes for a question or discussion. Over to you,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Greeting to all of you. Firstly, the chairperson of the panel, Dr. Hemraj Bansalji, and all others who are presenting the papers and also the respective delegates. I'm trying to present a paper on foreseeing anthropocenic havoc. It's a study of William Wordsworth's poems. So my title is also the same. And this is a particular paper which deals with environment, its importance, and the kind of times we are living within, and the different problems which are encountered both in the modern days, and a brief going back into have been the subject of discussion, as we all know, in all fields almost of literature since ages together, and environment consciousness has been lost by the modern man. So anthropogenic changes in the Anthropocene, that is the modern period, we can say excessive indulgence, and bringing in destruction to the planet and to the environment in which we live in. So this paper attempts to focus on Wordsworth's select poems in the light of eco-criticism in order to shed light on the poet's views about the interdependence of man and nature. As Lawrence Buell, an eco-critic, states on similar terms in his book Future of Environment Criticism, that the roots of eco-criticism proceed beyond the modern times into the romantic backgrounds. I would also stress on the same. And Buell, I quote Buell when he says that the idea of nature has been a dominant or at least residual concern for literary scholars and intellectual historians ever since these fields came into being. Wordsworth is considered as a major English romantic poet, and as we all know, that romantic poetry denotes the true expression of the nostalgia of human being as a result of man's separation from Mother Nature and Earth. Romanticism itself, as we know, has emerged as a great literary movement based on artistic, intellectual, and idyllic dimensions by the end of the 18th century. It was an abrupt reaction to the heavy industrialization that was taking place because of the Industrial Revolution and the scientific developments, and also of the rational thinking which was involved at that time. Such rationalization had encroached justifying the existence of nature only for the sake of mankind. William Wordsworth was the one, as Worcester, a critic, has pointed out in 1977, that he was the first generators of ecological perspective. I quote, who was in search for holistic or integrated perception, an emphasis on interdependence and relatedness to nature, and an intense desire to restore man to a place of intimate intercourse with the vast organism that constitutes the earth, unquote. I now refer to Wordsworth's poem, The Ruined Cottage, in order to supplement this holistic vision of nature. He emphasizes the importance of nature for promoting human spirit. I quote the poem, at length the cottage I returned fondly and traced with milder interest that secret spirit of humanity, which amid the calm oblivious tendencies of nature, amid her plants, her weeds and flowers, and silent overgrowings, still survived. I unquote. So Wordsworth's interest was primarily in nature, its long-standing patience, its empathy, and the unspeakable nature was given a voice by his poetry. Wordsworth, in fact, delivers a form of advocacy for another which is felt to be unable to speak for itself, that is nature. McCusick had supported this anthropocenic view of Wordsworth, and he says that Wordsworth is one of the founders of English Romanticism, a poet having a vital influence and a great decipher of ecological imbalances caused by the anthropogenic influences of the modern industrial society. Hence, Wordsworth is the key contributor to the fundamental ideas and core values of the modern environmental movement. A close reading of any of Wordsworth's nature poems would definitely make you understand this viewpoint that nature has a superior role in human life. And he, in fact, broadened the ecological impacts that nature exists for the sake of man, but to supplement man and not for being controlled by man itself. To quote another poem, we can easily understand how this particular view of the Anthropocene, which is the impact of man on the Earth's geology and ecosystems, had brought in drastic usage of land, overusage of ecosystems, biodiversity, etc., leading to different species extinction. All these views are similarly being reflected and viewed by Paul Curzon and diatom researcher Eugene Stormer, who also proposed in similar terms, and Wordsworth has foreseen this long back in the 18th century. In his poems, he has written about this beginning of heavy industrialization, which will constantly lead to more urbanization, more pollution, and he loved the forests more as he understood the difference between what modernization has led to. So he, in his sonnet, The World is Too Much with Us, which was written in 1802, he speaks about the heartless rejection by the humans of nature's importance and the turn of events which are led to the devastation caused by industrialization. I quote, the world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers, little we see in nature that is ours, we have given our hearts away, a sordid boon, I am quote. And lastly, I want to even conclude with a few things about how Wordsworth's greatness has in fact spoken about lot of the reciprocal relationship which is needed between man and nature, between human and the non-human world. And this has been destroyed in the modern age, which really has the anthropocenic influence and the havoc being caused. He had quoted I quote only only two lines, which are most essential, because he respects our imagination, our development, and everything. But he wants to point out, and he spells like Depesh Chakravarti, that the collapse of the age-old humanistic distinction between natural history and human history, and humans as species, and only as a part of the Earth's time period, and humans meddling into the nature's impact, has caused a heavy disaster and will lead to climate change. So this havoc is already foreseen, and he only says that, "Come forth," I quote, "come forth and bring with you a heart that watches and receives," I end quote. And concludingly, I want to say two lines, that Wordsworth's poems echo modern man's world of wickedness and misery with industrial revolution, the pollution, the misuse of fossil fuels, the wars, and to extent the commodification, everything which has distanced ourselves from our natural roots. The havoc and dread of a harrowing future and the drastic effects of the Anthropocene can only be avoided if man establishes a close relationship with nature, with all non human forms, and he understands the bond, he understands the affinity of man with nature, of man, as he says, the heart of man should understand nature as the gentle agency which leads us all to feel. And we have to feel and understand what nature is for all of us and what future holds for all of us, if we have to if we have to avoid the havoc of the Anthropocene, of any disasters which would be impending us. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you so much, N Lakshmi ji. Well, is my voice actually doubling or echoing? I don't know. I'm getting that impression. Anyway, thank you so much, N Lakshmi ji. Well, you talked about how Wordsworth's poems actually they foretell you in a way, or they are able to foresee as to how the human has actually been kept at the center of this universe, this globe, and that is something which has resulted in the problems that we find nowadays. Now, just look at the Enlightenment. Now, Enlightenment was something during which these ideas of values of rather liberty, equality, right, democracy, fraternity, and so on and so forth, they were given prominent space. But simultaneously, it is since the time of Enlightenment too that we find that say man has actually been given over attention, and then it is this over attention to man which has actually been questioned, right, by obviously Wordsworth in 18th century, but even prior to that, if you look at simultaneous philosophers, writers, thinkers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, right, and his other works for that matter, so they were also sensitive to nature. Right now, simultaneously, when you are looking at this poem, you are talking about Anthropocene havoc, right? So I was earlier expecting that, well, you are bringing in Lucy poems, the series of Lucy poems here, in order to talk about that, about Anthropocene and how Wordsworth actually foresees that. Now, by eschewing traditionally dualistic modes of representation that privilege human experience, what Wordsworth does is he creates a space for ontological perspectives that disrupt the human-centric mode, right, and remind us of our inextricability, right, from nature, and thereby instituting new possibilities for what in conceiving of both romantic canonicity, right, and our place in the biosphere. Right. So you brought in these poems like Ruined Cottage. You brought in The World is Too Much with Us, the little we see in nature, right? We keep on living our lives. Just spending, and then passing the time like this. So see, they are actually a timely, they have been a timely intervention, but we haven't, drawn those lessons from from Wordsworth or from other lover writers for that matter, right? So, well, my question as such, there is not any question as such, but then how do you look actually, because we are looking at what at the fragile ecology that we have before us, right? So I mean, what from Wordsworth's poem you exactly can tell help us out during these times when we can establish a balance between man and nature, between human and non-human, that is the creatures around. Any one thing that you would like to tell? uh, we are not able to listen to you.
Sir, in fact, I have summarized the paper, but inside the paper, I have also brought in the different things that other nature poets also have a little bit briefed out, and we have never cared to understand it. And nature for us has been such a kind of boon for all of us. And in fact, only spiritualists, those who can establish a kind of affinity with nature, they can understand what nature means for all of us. And they can foresee the changes which, if nature gets affected, then we can easily foresee what is going on. But if there is no spiritual connection, if we are not able to get connected to it, if we are not able to get connected in it with a bondage, like we identify ourselves with nature, then automatically it is going to lead into a great age where we can foresee the future of the planet in a different way altogether, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. It was a wonderful answer. And then with that, I conclude that, well, yes, we need to extend a part of our personality and then identify that with nature so that we
Yes, sir.
become one with it. And then we
Wonderful.
begin to consider it as something which is a part of us rather than as something which is different from
Yes.
us. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I move
We
to
are
the
indetachable, sir. In fact, we are indetachable parts of each other,
yeah,
not
exactly.
as other. We should not look at it as the other, but
Yeah,
in
that
fact,
is
as part of ourselves, as you said. Thank you, sir.
okay, ma'am. Okay. Yes, yes, that is what I was trying to say. Now let us move to the third speaker here. The third speaker, it is actually a collaborative paper, a joint paper. It is by Jupin Arosa, SS, PhD research scholar, Department of Tribal Studies, Central University of Jharkhand. And then uh, Dr. Rabindranath Sharma, Associate Professor. Uh, Over to you, Jubin Rosa. I'm sorry if I pronounce it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Jubina Rosa. Okay.
Yeah, Jubina Rosa, please just take, I would say,
Okay.
8 to 9 minutes. We have to conclude the session by 10.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, all of you. So, I
Uh,
myself, Jubina
it,
Rosa, research scholar.
Ma'am, it would be fine if you turn on your video. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So my title of the paper is Representation of Yoruba Tradition in the Contemporary African Poetry, reading the Ozentrace Songs of the Marketplace. So that is a collection of poetry actually. And because of I'm not consuming so lots of time, so let me move on to my paper. So Africa is a multicultural country. People believe in their culture and tradition and follow it firmly because they associate it with their identity. So in order to retain their identity, they want to retain their things, including proverbs, with wisdoms, etc. So in their works also, what they got from their ancestors are much important and relevant as it used to be earlier. And proverbs are not only meant to decorate a language merely, so they all are based on common sense or experiences, and also help us to confront with difficulties of life and overcome whenever one is in dark. So African literature an area where the relationship of the writer with the land is absolutely recognized and understood. It covers a huge range of languages, cultures, and colonial context. So, literature in the African continent has its basic mainly in the traditions of South African. Lots of literatures, including Anglophone literature. So, a key element in the process of what celebrating African culture was the literary adaptation of the lore or a lore from the rich oral tradition. So, Africa, the most startling example of oral narrative styles in many works. So, I'm not reading a whole paper. So, let me skip some of the portions. I will manage time also. So the post-colonial stage was satire, ambiguity, and hybridity became the dominant motives in much African fiction from 1970s onwards. So there was also a pronounced move away from realist narratives to more fragmentary and experimental style. So the ethnic chaos, widespread, oppressive regimes in many emerging African nations, as well as the continuing dependence on Europe, led many writers to question the whole nationalistic project in their writings also. So the second generation writers, such as like African writers, such as including Neo Zundre, then so much writers are there. In third generation writers, including Adichie, I mean familiar names I'm mentioning here. So in contemporary African literature, Ni Ozundre occupies an important position. So Osindra achieves his objective of representing African oral traditions through the poems. So poetry of Osindra is a site of African oral cultural heritage and can be claimed that the African oral tradition is a rich and varied device of expression. So Osindra tries to manipulate the English language with the infusion of many legends, proverbs, riddles, and myths from the Yoruba tradition. So, through the language, Ozundre attempts to capture the tradition of the African people to feel the Yoruba tradition and the African culture among the readers. So, in the current paper, Ozundre's use of the elements of oral culture, especially proverbs and Yoruba words in Songs of the Marketplace, that is a collection of poetry, can be studied in detail. So again, I'm skipping some portion I'm skipping, and so one can be analyze what knowledge that social structure determines both experience and its expression. So the individuals who are assimilating the social structures are on the basis of existing what kind of what class consciousness, and the relationship between these individuals who belonged to this particular community is always followed by the logic of what cultural differences, etc. So proverbs becomes more favorable for the Renaissance politics, because it makes possible the world which negates the discourse of history. So thus in socialist democratic society, proverbs are less applicable than that of the periods of monarchy. So let me quote some lines from some of the poems of Neo Zundre. So the poem titled as Reflections. Reflections is it was a poem. So it can be analyzed on the basis of the usage of orality. So Osundre's usage of proverbs, I have mentioned earlier in the poetry, is so provocative and socially relevant. Provocative at the same time, it is socially relevant. So proverb employed in the poem Reflections is given below. So the lizard feeds on, I quote from the poem, the lizard feeds on its own brood and wonders why they say it barriers its futures in its gut. Uh, mm, um, so in the above lines, the above mentioned proverb says the social background of the country Africa. So people from Nigeria are suffering out of poverty. caused by the leaders from Africa themselves. So proverbs are representing the second phase of the like development of class consciousness that prevailed in Africa, so the society. So when a person who realized his or her fate, which determined by the divided consciousness among the poor people who alive in their society, finally cursed himself or herself because of the class struggle prevailed in the society or the system among the classes. So thus they always divided people on the basis of caste, religion, and even gender. So it always limits man's possibility, human beings' possibilities of a better livelihood. Another example of the proverb can be found in the last stanza of the poem Reflections. I caught from the poem. The world is like a solar bonnet stream shovel. It scoops earth from one place to fill another. So apart from this poet, Ozundre employs a Yoruba proverb that cannot translate it in the poem. It is in the their language. So many proverbs are used in many poetries, not only in the poem Reflections, but another poem to the Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, one can see another usage of a proverb I caught from the poem to the titled as to the Dinosaurs. The whip that carved wheel on the first wife will descend from the rafters someday to give the new bride a stock of history. And another poem, excuse me, sir, I think there are some noises outside because I'm staying here, I'm in Ranchi, staying outside. So I think there are some noises. I'm sorry for that. So let me conclude my paper here. Let me conclude my paper. So this paper, representation of Yoruba tradition in the poetry collection Songs of the Marketplace by me Ozundre, examines how the poet's deployment of proverbial lore and folk songs in his poetry. So as the oral traditional performances, his poetry employs rich Yoruba and so much literary devices, such as usage of repetitions. Many poetic styles are so unique. Let me stop here, sir.
Well, thank you, Jubina Gosaji. Well, now looking at your paper, it addressed something from Africa. It was obviously a wonderful paper. Let me just correct you in the very beginning.
Okay, sir.
When you started reading the paper, what you referred to that Africa is a country having a multicultural setup. But let me tell you that it is not a country, it is a continent, and it has got 54 countries. I hope you are aware of it.
Sorry,
But then
sir. Sorry, sir.
it is a mistake that we make usually.
I'm
Now,
sorry, sir. Africa. Sorry. It was a wrong statement. Sorry for that.
no problem at all. No problem at all. I was just referring to it. Now,
Thank you, sir.
you also talked about nationalistic project, and then how these nationalistic projects they have failed in many countries. Now, if you look at Africa, the colonizers they started leaving Africa post 1950s, and then it was the year 1960 when nearly 17 countries in Africa they got independence. But what happened in those countries after the colonizers went? Look at the case of Nigeria itself. The poet about whom you are speaking comes from Nigeria, right? And then you look at the civil war which took place there. Look at how even Wole Soyinka had to live in a fear, live in exile, right? Live in jail. Look at Kenya for that matter. Gugi
Definitely.
wa Thiong'o
Yeah,
had to live
Tiango. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about it. And then see assassination attempts on him at Harare and so on and so forth on airports. And he had to resort to write that devil on the cross in on toilet paper in a jail. Now see, it is something which speak of as to how we look at these nationalistic projects post independence with an eye of suspicion. And it is in that, if you situate your paper, what you find in the poems in this context, because see why it is important, because when you are looking at this catchy title, songs of the marketplace, right? So what is the purpose of the writer in bringing this us before us? Now see, it is this work which reflects the image of a market, right? Market arena where the poet can reach out to a majority of downtrodden individuals who gather for buying and selling activities, right? So it does address a wide range of issues which border on corruption, right, poverty, and at the same time administrative ineptitude, right? So it is something which I think you can bring in more detail while you send your paper for publication.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the detailed, minute. I mean, you have given minute details regarding the subject, like the paper. So I'm very much thankful to you, because I know that this is not fine, or like not only perfect, but I have to work more on this paper. So thank you so much
No,
for that.
it's fine. I'm not saying there is so much in your paper, but since the
No.
categories of people who actually come to the marketplace are the downtrodden, those who suffer the brunt of socio-political vices, right? So the market
Right.
usually becomes the appropriate avenue actually for creating revolutionary awareness. That is what I wanted to say, and then you can bring that out, right? So
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not only about that tradition or oral or stylistic elements, but then thematic too. That is, I hope you need to include in your paper.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay,
Definitely, I will do, sir. Thank you, sir.
yeah, thank you so much. Now, going to the next presenter. The next presenter before us is Keka Das, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Vidyasagar College for Women, and he's going to speak on "Do you hear the children weeping?" A sneak peek into the problematics of family and troubled psyche of children. So, over to Keka Das now. Do we have this speaker? Well, if we do not have this speaker, then all the three presentations, they have actually come to an end now. And then all the three paper presenters, they have discussed these three different perspectives here. And then yes, ranging from William Wordsworth, and then how his poetry actually can be seen as something addressing those issues in minute details which are affecting us nowadays, and at the same time how actually what we call progress, or what we call actually this infallibility, too much trust in the infallibility of human reason, right? That is something which we have been sensitized about by such writers very early. And nowadays, if you look at the writers who are dealing with, right, this too much thrust on anthropocentrism at the cost of other species around us or nature around us, that is something that we are being made aware about by Margaret Atwood. You just look at that, I mean, a trilogy of her, right? You look at India, Amitabh Ghosh, right? And then The Great Derangement. You look at the Island on Gunpoint, and so on and so forth. So those works, they do address these concerns nowadays. But then, yes, the writer pointed out there that how Wordsworth sensitized us about all those things, right, during the early 19th century. And then yes, from 1790 98 onwards, to be more precise. Other paper that we had, now we already had discussion on these papers, but just concluding remarks. The other paper that we had with us, it was by Dr. Samla K. And Samla K ma'am spoke on actually the importance of inclusivity, right? How inclusive education is a remedy actually for all kinds of ills that we find before us. And we are really grateful to our political thinkers and social reformers, right? Political thinkers in the form of Mahatma Gandhi, that she talked about here. And then yes, spiritual thinker in the form of Vivekananda, who actually did think a lot in terms of, right, social milieu, and at the same time political milieu, in order to bring about that is a reform in the living conditions of the masses in our society, that is in India. And that is that a role of character making education, right? They're actually thrust on this value education, that is actually the need of the day. Because we time and again say this, that if education does not make us a human being, right, a better human being, right, then the degrees are not merely there to embellish us and send us to these high salaried jobs nowadays. So the humane element, humane component, right, that is more important to be developed alongside our academic distinctions, right? That is wherein ma'am talked about, right, these two reformers, right, coming from, two different, ideologies. If we camp them today, camp them today from, present perspectives, that is how they have actually been divided. But both had this one particular thrust to make actually India a better place to live in, socially as well as politically, right? So Gandhi has talked about that in his Hind Swaraj. We are quite aware of that, and that is why I said that both of them are critical traditionalists who look at a tradition, right, like critics, right, like critics, in the sense that, well, you are not sentimental about something which is yours. Try to look it into what is wrong there and then point that out. That is what would make you an objective thinker, right, or what we would call a rationalist. So thank you, ma'am, for your paper. And the last paper that we just had a discussion on came from Nigeria, right? So African literature as such, how prominent it has grown actually post independence, and then how this writer is not happy with the present mode of living. Why? Because see, when your sensibilities, they are either hurt, or when you are able to, when you are jolted to an extent that, well, you begin to think about such little details, or marketplaces, for example, where these people gather, right? So it is something which speaks volumes about your that is a sensitivity as a writer, right, and your tender heart too. So song of the marketplace, as this poem was, a collection of poetry was there, right? It was again to think about the masses, right? Think about those who come there, and sometimes they do not have a penny to spare in order to buy something. So those, what I assume is that it is those people, that class actually, which remains under the under, as the focal point of discussion. So this is something that I had to say again on these three presentations. So with that, I conclude from my side. If the audience has to make an observation on this virtual platform, they're welcome. So well, if there is not any question, so my thanks to Abhyudita Singh ma'am because it is she who recommended my name to Shailja Vasudev ma'am for chairing this session. I can also see Kamani ma'am there. Kamani ma'am, good morning. It is your session who is going to take place now. So very best wishes. And we also have with us, I mean, those whom I know, Anil, if I'm not mistaken, from Jammu, right? Central University of Jammu. Anil, I hope you are fine. It has been a long time since I talked to you. Well, we'll try to join your session if possible, right? So thank you all. Thank you very much.